Hi everyone, we're CIS and we're back again for another podcast.
Hello.
Hello, hi.
Hello.
This time we're going to be talking about being natural again, be more specific on how you can be more natural. Lily, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, I have a question from the previous podcast though. So did we decide that being natural is good for you? Because I think we just kept talking about what is being natural and whether nudists and Amish people are a good example of that or not. So what was the conclusion from it?
I think the conclusion was that we try as much as we can to be in sync with nature. For example, exercise in open air, try to sleep in the night and get up in the morning. Follow the natural body clock, so to say. Eat the right amount of fruit and veg and that kind of stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, or the other stuff, the Amish and the nudists, I think that was more of about how much the use of technology and how much technology people want to use. Not just technology, but in what age or what kind of situation or lifestyle people want to live. But I think we agree that as human beings we go forward and make new things and come up with new ways of living and doing things, but at the same time try to stay healthy and be in sync with nature as much as possible. So that was pretty much the conclusion, I think.
Yep, I think it's very easy to see that we get off the natural line. For example, nature is giving us air in abundance, but we don't breathe well. We are not breathing deep enough. So we are not quite absorbing the nature's gift properly, and we are more going for worried about the food consumption. And if you look at the metabolism also, the energy from food comes only if the things are oxidized properly, which require proper oxygen in the blood cells. And if our breathing is not well, then what am I eating doesn't quite release its energy, the inherent energy that food contains. So we are not quite in sync with the nature. If I am not absorbing air to the fullest capacity, but on the other hand I may be even overeating food. So that's kind of contradiction we are likely to end up if I don't value the gift of the nature.
Basically you're saying that the availability of a certain resource is directly proportionate with the amount of natural intake desirable by human beings. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, our intake should be more concerned with what is more easily available, because that is more valuable. So I should be more concerned about absorbing it to my fullest capacity, because that is more necessary, essential.
That's
and
quite an
indeed
interesting
air
point,
is more
actually.
essential.
Your proportion is directly related to the availability. So the maximum absorption in terms of consumption would be of air, then water, and then food. That's the ratio. So you would have more of water in your daily intake, more of air than water, and less of food. If you go by that logic, then people can contend again. I'm bringing points from the last podcast. If you're living in an area where there's less vegetation and more of animals, then it's more natural for me to eat animals.
Yeah, but I think we counter that argument by saying that, humans have moved to different parts of the world where
they're not naturally supposed to.
Well, not necessarily they're not naturally supposed to be there, but, the
discretionary.
Yeah, for example, when we say about humans as a whole, then we should look at Earth as a whole. So if you just look at like one situation or one particular small area, then circumstances might be different, but we're talking about the race and the planet as a whole.
Yeah.
Jeff mentioned about going to the moon, then somebody will carry canned food, etc. to the moon, because that's an expedition for a while. It's not quite a place to...
Yeah, it's like we can
habitable.
scuba dive using oxygen cylinders and still stay underwater, but does that mean that it's natural to us suddenly?
Yeah. The thing is, if human beings have to naturally survive, okay? They have to live in this equatorial belt, which has a lot of vegetation, okay? And it is natural for us to want to have a roof over the head, okay? It is also natural for humans to survive and have families, okay? And by that standard, this population explosion is natural. The consumption is natural. The fuels that we're using or we have used is natural.
Yeah, it is natural.
So then, everything that we're doing is natural, then why are we even having this podcast?
Well, we're not saying... No, not that everything we do is natural. That's the point of the podcast. What is being natural and what is not being natural. For example, we discussed that the Amish, etc., are not necessarily being natural. Yeah, I don't understand what your point is.
No, the point is that is everything about a lifestyle the right thing? I mean, by the standards of the optimum amount of being natural, if there were one, then is this what we are? Or should we make some changes? Because that's what we want to talk about, how to be more natural, isn't it?
I think there should obviously be changes on being natural if we're defining natural as just what is readily available from nature. For instance, a cancer sufferer would often like to have chemotherapy. Naturally available chemotherapy is quite thin on the ground. There are places in the world where you get natural background radiation. Norfolk, for example. No, really. Norfolk, there's a lot of radiation. Even foods. Anything with something like potassium in will be radioactive. If you look on the internet, you can find a write-up of something called the banana equivalent dose, which is basically the amount of radiation that is inherent in a banana. There's a lot of things that are radioactive, and people naturally are radioactive in very, very low levels. There's lots of different sort of things that you can have in certain amounts are good, certain amounts aren't good. With modern technology, in certain circumstances they're good. There's a lot of different circumstances which change what's good for you, and it may not necessarily be what's natural for you.
Okay, so let me sum this up right. In order for me to live naturally, what should I do? Okay, we've already agreed that having vegetarian food is more natural. Okay, so I'm a vegetarian. Marvin said going out for exercise every so often, that's natural. Sleeping with during the night and waking up during the day, okay, that's natural. Am I allowed to have a car? Am I allowed to, you know?
It's not like a rule book, like you're allowed and not allowed.
Yeah, but I'm just still trying to figure it out. I mean, what's the optimum amount of being natural? You know, with still having a life is a
It's
discussion.
going to change between person to person because different people will have different needs.
Places, yeah.
They will lead different lifestyles, which will mean they will need different amounts of food, which will mean they will need different amounts of exercise. They might come across certain illnesses, which will mean that they need to do different things differently. They may have a gluten intolerance, which means that grains are all of a sudden not good for them. They may be lactose intolerant, and that may mean that they really struggle to have milk. It's going to vary from person to person depending on the situation. So there's no optimum amount of being natural for everyone.
I just thought of something though. Maybe there is one optimum amount if you say survival in a way that you don't harm anyone or anything. As long as you don't harm the planet and as long as you don't harm a living being.
But you can't really monitor that on a personal basis. For example, if you have a car, you use that, it causes pollution. Now, you can say that it is harming the planet. But the fact that the fuel that is being burned is from the planet itself, and it's only natural for it to be burned, is also natural. But the problem is that the amount of fuel we as a race have burned in such a short amount of time. So that can all be calculated on a very large scale. So you can't really monitor things like these, on a very, very personal basis or a family basis.
Okay, so perhaps that we have the knowledge that building a house, that means cutting the trees from a certain plot of land.
Yeah.
And then having a car and then polluting the planet even more. I'm aware that this will cause harm to the planet.
No, these are not necessarily bad things, and they might not necessarily cause harm to the planet either. But if we do a lot of that at the same time, then it might.
I think the best way would be, okay, if I have cut down 20 trees to build a house, then I make sure I plant another 20 trees, just to even things out. So no matter what I do, just by surviving, you could say that even about animals. Animals go and graze the land, or okay, just because now poultry is such a big thing. We have unnatural amounts of animals being bred and being fed on huge farmlands, which probably is not the way they would normally do, I think, if they were just left to themselves.
Cows are often fed bits of other cows, which I very much doubt is a natural thing.
Yeah, so there's a lot of funny stuff going on, but as long as someone is living on the planet, there will always be a degree of some kind of damage by that. By that standard. But as long as you try and even it out by, say, planting more trees or cutting down on the waste that you're producing, maybe that's more natural.
Energy requirement is very crucial. We need energy for cooking, for transportation, and it's the burning question now. Our dependency on oil repercussions in the form of greenhouse gases. These are very important burning questions now. In terms of being natural, I think in terms of a thumb rule, if nature is gifting me something in a particular characteristic time, then my consumption of that thing should relate to that. For example, if I am in a geographical area A, where the annual rainfall is certain centimeters of water, then my water consumption should be commensurate to that rainfall. If I am using up more, then the underground water table is going down, and then I am harming the interests of the future generation. Of course, I can overuse the water in my lifetime, but then I am disturbing the ecological balance because the water table is significantly going down. What we have seen is internal combustion engines were invented about 125 years ago, and since then the rapid use of the petroleum products, which have taken millions of years to be formed underneath the earth's surface, we have used up so fast. This has caused an imbalance. Now suddenly we are in a situation where we don't know how to handle the energy crisis because of our over dependency on a particular kind of fossil fuel. So as I gave the example of the rainfall, and our rate of consumption has to have some relationship with the rate of nature's giving, the way nature is giving
but
to
if
us.
so, for example, if there's a certain number of people living there, and the next generation there's more people living there, what is the solution to that? It's natural for people to breed and expand families. Then they're not being natural using the water.
You can just have places working together. For example, London doesn't get a lot of rain comparatively. Birmingham doesn't get a lot of rain comparatively. There's lots of places within countries that don't get a lot of rain. Rain can be imported from other parts of the country. That's the way technology can be used as a bit of a leveller. And indeed, countries have to work together. Certain places, there will be a river running through. If one of them decides to dam up the river to generate electricity or just to siphon off more water for its own farmland or its own uses generally, then countries downstream of that river will struggle. Does that mean that those countries just have to accept that and then live naturally within their means, or does that mean that they can come to a diplomatic solution?
Sure, these are our man-made boundaries which are causing these problems. But what Lily is saying has something to do with population explosion. That is complicating the matter further. At this point, while talking being natural, and we were discussing the energy element, the pollution and other things. So I was just trying to use the water as an example where it makes sense to have some kind of equilibrium between the rate I use it and the rate the nature is giving to me in terms of rainfall. I wanted to translate that relationship with our use of petroleum, coal or wood, or for that matter any other energy source. That we have used oil at a very, very fast rate because of this industrial evolution and internal combustion engines which were invented about 100 plus some years ago. And in that small period, we have used up oil which was formed probably in many millions of years at a very, very fast rate. So much so that now we are going deep in high seas, and like there was an oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. So all kinds of tragic accidents taking place because we are overdoing it. That's where we are becoming slightly unnatural, I will say. Because in a particular technological direction like motorized vehicles, we went too far that now we are facing some problems. And that's where we should have exercised some intelligent solution, maybe not too many people driving their cars, some kind of community transport and other kind of balances. Then if we use this formula that use of water should be as much as I am likely to get, if we used it in all other directions of our life, we would have been more sensible. That's the kind of input I would thought being natural is all about. Being dependent on nature but not stretching it too much.
Yes, that was where we started, wasn't it?
Whether we found it or not, we can say it.
Yeah. No, sure. Yeah, that's really good, guys. I think we found that there's a lot of different interpretations of being natural and a lot of different ways to be natural. So I think we'll wrap it up there. It's certainly a topic that we could look into revisiting in the future, and we'll be looking at other topics as well. So I hope you've all enjoyed it. It's goodbye from me, Jeff. Goodbye for everyone else.
Yep. Bye bye.
Bye. See you soon, guys.
And I hope you enjoyed. Bye.
Yep. Bye.